In Kazakhstan, the craft developed over the centuries, leaving a legacy of unique products of artisans, amazing wealth of artistic imagination, and the perfection of form, a respect for one's heritage, traditional cultural values. These are the main tasks of the current generation. The history of folk crafts is a record of creative research and the discoveries of folk artists. The art of the Kazakh people, their national traits and traditions, were formed and perfected for centuries. Folk art stores in itself a historical memory and national heritage. Masters of folk art have bit by bit collected and continue to collect the experience of previous generations, multiplying them and transferring their skills from one generation to the next. Since ancient times, the forest has been a faithful assistant to man. For centuries, it was a source of food and warmth. It was shelter from your enemies, and it gave clean air and rejoiced the eye to look at. The tree deserves special attention. The tall, slender trunk looking into the sky, and the beautiful, sprawling crown. You can admire this amazing material infinitely. When a person touches it with his skillful hands, it gives wood a second life, and the world acquires a new masterpiece of art. The wood and hands of the artist are the eternal union of goodness and labor. Wood processing is one of the first crafts that a human being has mastered. It was in wood that a man learned to express his thoughts and feelings. That was how art was born. The craftsmanship of ancient artists is surprising and fascinating, but in our modern world, there are people who carry the legacy of the past, creating truly unique masterpieces. Farkhad Kamalov is among them. He devoted his life and work to one of the most complex expressive materials, wood. In his author's work, you can see his soul, his thoughts, and his feelings. The path of Farkhad Kamalov into art was predetermined by life itself. From early childhood, he showed a great interest in pencils and paper, as well as paints. He started his passion for art from watercolor, creating paintings filled with light and rainbow colors. But everything receded when he discovered the power of wood. This material can realize any idea, any design, and the search for various forms and techniques began, revealing to him the possibilities of artistic expressiveness of the wood. He learned to feel the inner character of different types of wood, He realized his inner inseparable connection with them. And a tree can really only in the hands of a real master become an artistic tool. One must be sensitive, obedient, and faithful. There are lots of tree species, and each has its own special properties. Most often, the master works with poplar wood, which has a light color, and the structure is uniform and fine porous. Often, the natural heterogeneity of the wood gives the master inspiration. Sometimes it happens that some interesting spot, the heterogeneity of wood, the twig or the bend of trunk, leads the artist to an idea and occupies the important place in the whole picture, and perhaps even predetermines it. For the master, any log, board, or trunk is a valuable material. Each of them have their own dignity and beauty, and the artistic level of the product largely depends on the correct choice of the breed. You can perform the same work from different breeds. In the end, you will get completely different results in terms of quality. The ability to correctly use the material will come only with many years of practice. And when the old dry trees are cut from the parks, or the track is cleared from them, Farkhad comes and collects them. Any dried tree, windswept barrel is an excellent material for the master. For work, it is essential that the wood is dry, and the drying takes place with storage. Wood should be stored in a place that does not penetrate the direct rays of the sun and rain, where there is no dampness or draft. Logs and boards are arranged in rows and short distance from each other, so that the air freely circulates into the gaps between the blanks. Freshly chopped wood is not suitable for carving. It is good when you can easily get the stock of wood. If necessary, you can examine and choose the most suitable one. The master always looks closely at the wood, trying to understand what nature wanted to say. It is the tree that gives creative insight. It tells the artist what kind of creation will come out of it. It is in his power to make a tree voluminous and massive, or of the finest light lace, light and airy. And the wood, without wasting its original qualities, begins to gain new value and artistic expressiveness. Farkhad often works with poplar wood. It is soft, light, homogeneous, and also doesn't crack during drying. The master has said that the process of accumulating his own creative experience and working as an artistic restorer provided him with an invaluable opportunity to touch the monuments of culture of different times. He was strongly convinced that it was wood that would give him a wide ability of self-expression, because if he chose to work with metal, it would require the seriality of castings from molds. And if he chose stone, well, it is too dense to respond to the subtlest shades of creative improvisation. Before you take the knife, you need first and foremost to learn how to listen and how to feel the wood. An experienced master already knows by the external characteristics of the wood that it determines the degree of suitability of the material. He looks carefully and rattles it. With this technique, you can find all the weak places of the wood, the degree of readiness for carving and processing. To comprehend the whole wisdom of wood carving is certainly not easy, but it is the desire to overcome difficulties that determines the real master. Farkhad shared with us that carpentry includes both a purely craft part. This is the processing of wood by the tool and joining of parts into the product. There is also a creative element, the ability to choose and combine the breeds, to feel the harmony of the product, to decorate it with carvings in such a way that after it, the natural beauty of the material still remains. The master must have a sense of proportion and what is called the feeling of wood. In his creative search, the artist has achieved, above all, absolute mastery of the material, and his work was recognized by many art connoisseurs. He participates in numerous international exhibitions. Those who attended the exhibition argue that the work of the master seems to be endowed with some kind of extraordinary power that radiates heat and absorbs all negative emotions of a person. The sculptor's works are kept in private collections in Germany, Yugoslavia, Russia, France, and the USA. In our country, the works are represented in the funds of the Central State Historic Museum of Kazakhstan, the Kazakh Museum of National Instruments, and the Kazakh Academic Theater. The tools and the instruments the master uses in his works are of great value. Farkhad makes his own cutting tools, knives, chisels, and others. They are not only firmly made of the appropriate steel and always sharpened, but they are also beautiful, with comfortably curved handles. The tools of the master are very diverse in their purposes, their sizes, and shapes. Often, the specific work suggests a specific tool that is needed. Farkhad has formed his own set of tools. He has both standard ones and unique ones. The sculptor enjoys working with a good instrument. The chip is easily separated, leaving a clean, burr-free cut. The constant work requires a sharp tool, and of course, special care and accuracy. The knife is, as it were, a natural extension of the carver's hand, an obedient executor of his designs. When the master works, there is a feeling that the hand, the brush, and the blade of the knife are an inseparable part of him. In front of your eyes, you can see a rebirth of a piece of wood. Over the years, Farkhad has developed his own technique of processing wood of various breeds and found his plastic solutions. The wood itself sometimes directs the work, its beauty, texture, and the successful arrangement of its shape. Working with such an amazing living material, the master tries to create his work so that his creativity and the creativity of nature merge into a single whole, so that later the image in the form which was created would look like they were created by nature itself. In the work of Farkhad, there is no orientation towards any specific historical layers of culture. The artist considers himself an adherent of the classical school, and realism for him is a powerful, diverse world, where the simplicity and clarity of the idea does not preclude the convention of its reproduction. He mixes and opens national traits of different people and continents: Japanese, African, Sax, and Turkic, as well as Russian. For the author, all of this expresses the diversity of terrestrial life, and in the end, the result is an experience of human life itself. The uniqueness of the master is also in the fact that he works without sketches, trusting the material completely and his inner intuition. On the prepared bar, he makes only notes with a pencil for the future composition. For the future image, he starts to work. The picture can be erased, and the thread cannot be fixed, and only the perfect technique allows the master to work this way. The artist perfectly uses the plastic of the bizarre natural form of a tree trunk or root. Sometimes he leaves much untouched and only finalizes some parts. His works are dominated by images of people. For him, as a person, his personality is interesting. His works are dominated by images of people. For him, people and their personalities are interesting. His creations in the form of small carvings make up genre compositions, and they play constantly changing plot combinations of life. Scenes from everyday life, relationships of people and their characters are the eternal game of life. Inspired by the artist's hands, the material acquires a special expressiveness of the characters. Farkhad is always inspired by folk art of the land, where he was born and raised. Throughout his life, the traditions of Kazakh folk art were the object of attention, study, and admiration. Kamalov's creativity is not affected by the influence of fashion trends. Its meaning is in simplicity, naturalness, the purity of thought, and the love for mankind, faith in his spiritual qualities and sense of humor. His ironic figures of people with their sometimes anatomical inaccuracies and asymmetries captivate with their warmth, cordiality, and purity of images. Despite the different focus of the subject, each item exhibits an individual style of the master, although the works are absolutely different from each other. Filigree works, emotions and movements, full of feelings, these are the main components of the creative handwriting of the unique master. Masks, as a genre of art, occupy a significant place in the artist's work. Since ancient times, the mask is a symbol of transition to a different reality. The phenomenon of the mask is multifaceted. Farkhad's masks are endowed with personal and individual characteristics. And these are not classical Greek masks, showing symbols of human passions, and not mythological ones, which are needed to change reality, or religious to communicate with spirits. Farkhad's masks are different, bearing their own specific author's plan. In the masks of the master, the unity of man's eternal and concrete value is determined by the main condition of his earthly existence. At the same time, the artist deliberately avoids external aesthetics, trying to maximally reveal the essence of the idea put into the image. In some masks, the idea of succession, of generations is concluded. In others, the theme of growing protest, fear, or spiritual pain, or considering the argument about the complexity of the human character. The softness of the plastic, the golden surface of the toned tree, the rhythm of the alternating surfaces, creates a sense of harmony and vitality of the images. Surprisingly, Farkhad can breathe life into his characters, and when you peer into his work, it seems that the figures are moving and are about to speak to you. As professional experience accumulates, the expressiveness of the artistic image is more and more revealed, and the artist goes on to the next period of his work, where small forms turn into large-scale ones. He listens more to the inner voice of the material, the consonant with his own deep thinking. He creates great compositions. He is interested in creating furniture from a single trunk that gives a sense of fairy tale and magic. It is impossible to take your eyes off it. It is only possible to admire it. Eternal themes, invariable directions of mankind's development, such as love, birth, human experience. The unique works of the master tell us all about it. In the upward directed lines, the soft movement of light and color on the concave and protruding profiled surface of the elongated figures, and the other rhythms of existence are felt, however just as organic as the simple ordinary life. Farkhad Kamalov chose his own way, and he follows it going confidently, without doubting himself or looking backward. He seeks to tell the truth, considering it the highest manifestation of creativity. The works of folk artists are full of warmth, feelings, and thoughts. Every outstanding master is inspired by folk art of his land, and the traditions of his ancestors. That is why the works of folk artists are distinguished by a special immediacy, artistic integrity, and spirituality. In the next program, we will get acquainted with a unique master whose work is intertwined with national color, love of his roots and his people.